Okay, so let's break this down, and then I'll go into more detail ahead of the former head of Pakistani intelligence, Hamid Gul, joining us. And I would expect that he's going to make the point that Pakistani intelligence was involved in this raid, and because all he wants is the U.S. to get out of Pakistan. Again, I want to be clear here. Not one, not two, but three. Two of them that I spoke to directly, one of them who I can reveal because he was live on air, Steve Pachinik, the number 2 under Kissinger, saying he's dead, died of kidney failure, they're going to roll him out. Madeleine Albright, same thing, died of kidney failure, they've got him frozen, going to roll him out. Fox News, December 16, 2003, on Morton Kondracki program, being interviewed by Morton Kondracki. Now, remember in 2000, remember in 2001, 2002, they kept saying that they had him in their sights in Pakistan. The special forces were ready to kill him on the ground. They had drones. They were told, stand down. Whether you believe those stories or not, the government admits that they gave the order to not kill him at those times. And why? Because whether they really had the real Bin Laden in their sights or not, they want that myth to continue and go on as a pretext to keep expanding these wars. Now remember, Osama Bin Laden, on record, was a CIA asset. His code name was Tim Osman. And if you don't know about this, this is even in Newsweek. We have those articles linked to the articles we've written. In '79, Brzezinski's now written 2 books on this. They start having al-Qaeda/Taliban attack Russian bases on the Afghan border to the north, the 3 nations that border it, 2 of which the Russians were in, to get them to come in 1981, or late 1980. And that's all on record. They wanted the Russians to have their own Vietnam. And so General Hamid Gul, leading the Taliban forces out of Pakistan and Afghanistan, the U.S. forming the base of a secret army of Saudi Arabian, CIA, Israeli-controlled al-Qaeda. And they launched these attacks. Now, magically on 9/11, Newsweek, MSNBC report that Bush had the launch order to launch the attack on Afghanistan signed September 10th, 2001. He signed the order a day before. In the 6 months before, they massed 44,000 U.S. troops, 18,000 British troops into Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. They had the whole invasion force lined up before 9/11. Now, what does FBI translator Sybil Edmonds say? She testifies to Congress. They put a gag order on her. Later, she breaks the gag order 2 years ago, and she goes public. She was listening to FBI tapes off echelon of the CIA, quote, drug dealing, arms dealing, and running al-Qaeda, including the day of 9/11. Now, the Army doesn't know about this. Most of the intelligence agencies don't know. A lot of the ground troops they're going to fight that are called jihadis, al-Qaeda, Taliban, whatever name they give them, they don't know. That's why when they took over Afghanistan, Kandahar, Kabul, Times of London reported on the airlift of evil. You can search any of these terms, pull it up, where 8,000 Taliban and al-Qaeda leaders who were captured were ordered flown out to Pakistan and released. Now those same guys have been flown into Libya to attack Gaddafi, and we're hearing how there are little heroes and that al-Qaeda ain't so bad. They're doing this to end one phase of the psychological war and move on with new boogeymen like Anwar al-Awlaki, who's admittedly grew up, born in New Mexico, and then runs all the major terror attacks in the West, the underwear bomber, the shoe bomber, the Fort Hood shooter, the Times Square attacker. The government says he's running them. He's controlling these nut patsies that are real terrorists. He's finding them and funding them, and he's being protected, and he's meeting secretly at the Pentagon. And I was on with Mancow this morning on a syndicated show, and he's like, well, you claimed that. And I said, really, search this term. Anwar al-Awlaki died at the Pentagon months after 9/11 when he was most wanted. And they went, wow, it's there. You know it's there. Stop acting like it's not there. So everybody's supposed to be overwhelmed with this pride and play Team America and all this music, and people are calling in just ecstatic with glee. Who's worried about the economy imploding? Who's worried about the government-run health care? Who's worried about all the police state and the TSA? No, Obama, whose approval rating was plunging, you watch, it's going to go up now. And they just already had it scripted weeks ago for this morning. Congressional Medal of Honor winners. Oh, the patriotism. He's up there with the troops. So if you don't like Obama, you like Al-Qaeda and you don't like the troops. It's all about raising morale so the bankers can get us to feel good about ourselves while they rob us. Yeah, the war's over. For the unknown soldier. Isn't that interesting? The war is not over. In fact, that's the big issue here is they have the headlines out today. U.S. government, WikiLeaks, Al-Qaeda preparing to detonate nukes in Europe, in the U.S., 160 nuke bombs buried. On record for decades, they've got satellites and aircraft that can look through hundreds of feet of rock and pick up the resonant signature of highly refined uranium and plutonium. They know exactly where it is. But, oh, Al-Qaeda inside government buildings. You or I couldn't sneak into a government building and, put a teacup in the basement. But magically, they went in and buried nukes. That's right. Al-Qaeda from their caves, they buried 160 nukes. And that's in the news today. And thank goodness the TSA is there. And they're upping security at airports and train stations and may have checkpoints. And they're calling back the nuclear, chemical, biological teams from Japan that were helping because, my gosh, Al-Qaeda is about to hit us any minute. So you better be glad that we're in Afghanistan and Libya and everywhere else. Well, in Libya, it's the good Al-Qaeda, the media says, so you need to be patriotic and support those guys, like John McCain said. I mean, this is how ridiculous it is. And then scripted on a Sunday night so it would dominate. So the newspapers only have an hour or two to take whatever the White House said, no critical thinking. So the alternative media couldn't get ready to respond to it, but we never sleep, so we were on it. Great team. Kurt Nimmo, Paul Watson, myself last night, kicking butt until 3, 4 in the morning, kicking rumpus. Jaron was calling me at like 11, 12 at night. He was working on getting the big guest we've got coming up. And boom, we're out front. InfoWars is pretty much down right now. It can't handle 1 million people basically at once. Prison Planet is still up. We're struggling to keep InfoWars up. All the news that's at InfoWars is cloned over at Prison Planet. Get it out, folks, over at prisonplanet.com. Now, let me just go over a smattering of some of the background here of what's happened. Remember, Steve Pieczenik, the right-hand man in the State Department of Henry Kissinger, comes out and says he's on ice, he's dead, they're going to roll him out. He says that in April 2002. First place ever reported, ever told, very high-powered. He gets a lot of threats over it, calls me, begging me to remove the transcript. I said, the barn door is open. That horse left a long time ago. That train left the station, buddy. High-level Council on Foreign Relations member. Then a high-level Bush administration individual who lived in Austin between D.C. I'll give you, there's a couple dozen of them, but just gave you the source with Pieczenik with the transcript on record. That's 9 years and a month old. Then about a year later, White House source, who I run into, just makes the big joke about, we got it all set in the campaign, doesn't matter. We'll just bring Bin Laden out a week or two before the thing. We got him on ice. Yeah, he's dead. And the story's universal from these sources. He was dying of kidney failure, so they just killed him in Pakistan. That's 9 years ago. And people say, well, then how do they have these Marines lie? Well, you're not seeing them on the news. They'll all write books later and be movie stars, and Matt Damon will undoubtedly be playing them, or George Clooney. But you've got in the middle of a city, on the edge of the city, this big giant palace compound, and the thing is blowing up and fire shooting out of it. And they basically just grab some guy with a beard and say that's him, even if they did that. And then to get rid of the body, they immediately, to follow Islamic law, quote, run out and burial at sea so that there can't be a shrine. But don't worry, they've got DNA. They're going to tell you that the results. Really, Houston Crime Lab, San Francisco Crime Lab, FBI Crime Lab. I've had the former head of the crime lab on, Dr. Frederick Whitehurst, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and then last year, breaking down the industrial fraud. It came out in Houston. Tens of thousands of people were framed over a decade under orders. Oh, but the federal government, they'll release some DNA evidence that we can supposedly trust. But let's go even further here. We'll put this article up on screen. It's at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. This was already out last night and ran in hundreds of papers across the world. A photo of Bin Laden, and they put out two different versions for the public and said, this is the photo. Oh, this is it. They knew full well it wasn't the photo, that it had been out for many years as another fake they'd release. We have another article that Osama Bin Laden has been pronounced dead for the 9th time, and then we have links from the Colbert Report, did the research. I knew it was a bunch, but not 9 times. 9 times they killed him. He had 9 lives, this cat did. And they finally, and we have links to all the mainstream news articles in the article at PrisonPlanet.com. Where you can go read the 9 times they killed him. Which time do you want to believe? Well, this is the finale. I mean, with this big announcement. Before it would just be, yeah, we killed him, but... And so we'll show you that photo. They put out a clearly doctored photo with some gauze and a bandage on his chest and his mouth open and his head all and, you know, blown to bits. And from about 10 o'clock last night until about 7 a.m. this morning, they ran it in newspapers and everywhere saying, there's the dead Bin Laden. And I kept hearing phone calls this morning. It's great. I got to see the photo of that dead rat before they threw him in the ocean. I'm walking a little taller, little spring in my step. The talk show host, we want to hear from our military people that we care so much about. You're flying on an airplane, and the captain goes, we have 2 military people on board. Everybody please give them a round of applause. It's all just part of this. You've got to support the troops, but supporting the troops means supporting whatever the government says, whatever war they launch. But then when they cut their pensions or steal their death benefits or try to make them pay for their own medical care and flush them down the toilet, when they go on food stamps, well, let's not discuss that. That's not patriotic. Or when they die of DU poisoning or they have 4 times as many deformed children, even Life magazine reports, well, then the VA's not going to give you any help. Remember the Marine officer dying in the wheelchair who'd been in such great shape, the Marine Corps captain from the VX nerve gas that got destroyed at Camisea, begging for help before Congress in like 94, saying, I need treatment and crying. Who knows what happened? All I know is Steve Pachenik, number 2, under Kissinger at the State Department, comes on and says he's on ice 9 years ago, dead, and they're going to roll him out later when they feel like it. 2 other sources tell me that off record. Madeleine Albright, 3 years after I first break all this down, 2.5 years after I break it down, goes on Fox News and says they've got him on ice, they're going to roll him out, or they're thinking about it, and then the word is they didn't because of all the attention it was getting. That's why the system, that's why when I ran into that head White House, head of media operations guy in the bathroom, he was so angry. In Los Angeles, I didn't run into him. I was debating him, about to debate him on TV, and he was in there and really was extremely upset because this stuff had just come out a year before. Because this is their big plan. This is their big program. This is their big operation. Now the guy we've got scheduled to come on record has met and knows Osama Bin Laden. He was called a hero in the 80s fighting the Russians. The head of Pakistani intelligence, former tank commander, and a big veteran of the war with the Indians decades before, General Hamid Gul. And Pakistan is strategic. I will imagine that they're going to want to play along with, oh, yes, you killed him, and we helped you. And that is being reported that the Pakistanis helped in this. Helped in this. And the Pakistanis are going to now say, please leave. And the intel that I was already getting from some sources is they might produce Bin Laden, but I'd heard this so long I ignored it, to perhaps as an entree to start pulling out of Pakistan right at the point the Pakistan government says, get your drones out, get out of here. Now, they may actually use this to expand it. And I'm hearing that call in the media. I heard Senator Graham on TV this morning, driving in, listening to television, saying that that he shows that Pakistan's duplicitous and basically our enemy. And he tried to talk about al-Qaeda in Libya, why we need to be there to fight al-Qaeda, when on record, Washington Post, LA Times, they have to admit the core of the, quote, freedom fighters in Libya in the east are al-Qaeda and Taliban.